today I've got Dr Lynda Shaw, and hi Linda.
Hiya,
Now you're both a psychologist and a neuroscientist, aren't you, who specialises in successful ageing?
that's me.
Yeah. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what that actually means?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're all in the news all the time. We're getting more and more people living longer and longer, which is fantastic news. It's
Mm.
actually brilliant news. But there's also people saying that older people are a drain on society, and that's a terrible thing to say.
Oh, it's
So I
depressing, isn't
really
it?
am, I really feel very strongly about helping people or explain how we can really successfully age well, rather, so that we can contribute to society, so that we're actually useful creatures and enjoying our lives that we've been blessed with.
Absolutely. Now, I think today one of the topics we're going to talk about is the 7 things we can do to actually retrain our brains. So presumably that means keeping our brains sort of younger and healthier for longer.
Yeah. Yeah, dementia and Alzheimer's disease is a big concern, and a lot of people are very worried about it. Especially, you know what it's like when you open that fridge door and you look in the fridge, you think, why was I here? And then you close the fridge and have to walk away to find out why you're there in the first place, or where you put your car keys, or where you put your mobile phone. And when those things start to happen, you think, oh my God, I'm getting older, I'm losing my memory. But that's sort of normal forgetting. And I think we have to be very clear of the differences. But nevertheless, dementia and Alzheimer's disease is a major concern in our society and indeed right across the world. So it's something we all need to be very proactive in trying to help ourselves. And that's why there are 7 things, folks, that we can do to actually help ourselves, and they're worth doing.
So are you going to talk us through all 7 of those things then, so we can take those steps and actually help ourselves?
Yeah, yeah, we can help ourselves. And I think it's really important as well for people to feel as if they've got some sense of control over their lives.
Hmm.
Because when we feel as if we're actually doing something, we actually feel better anyway by default because we feel in control, we feel happier, we feel calmer. So that will help our brain anyway.
I can relate to that. I mean, I know that I have like a chronic illness myself, but before they knew what it was, you worry about it. Once you know what it is, you can deal with it and you can take steps to improve it.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the number one thing, the very number one thing that we can do to help our brain is the same as helping our heart and our physical health, and that's physical exercise.
Right.
It truly, truly is. In fact, we've got a smashing guy in our village here. He's 87 years old and he's a runner.
Mm.
He's fantastic. He runs. I can leave my house and go down the road in my car and I pass him running. I go on to the next town and do what I have to do and I come back and he's still running. He's running and you know he's quick. He's really fast. I actually defy 20-year-olds to outrun this chap. He's a legend in our area. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we all run like that because obviously this man's been doing it all his life and he's very used to it. But what I am suggesting is that because we get older doesn't mean we should stop.
No.
And indeed, as we get older, we should start if we haven't exercised before. But obviously, we will need to go to a doctor to get the all clear that we're doing it correctly. But it's incredibly important. I mean, the brain weighs only about 3 pounds, about 1.5 kilos, but it guzzles 20% of the body's energy. It's
Goodness.
absolutely enormous amount. So, we need loads of oxygen, lots of oxygen to feed that brain and to feed the rest of the body. So it's really important that we do that physical exercise. And funny enough, I was thinking about this, Kerry. My dad used to say, he used to tell me that when he was at school, and he was born in 1926, I think, yeah, 1926. When he was at school, they all had to do breathing exercises every day. Isn't that a good idea?
But we
Why
don't do
is
it anymore, do we?
no?
No.
We've
Mm.
stopped doing those sensible things. We've stopped doing that sort of stuff. I mean, it'd be fantastic if we teach our children to do breathing exercises so that we get more oxygen in the body, so that later on we benefit even greater than we would otherwise.
I was actually just talking to somebody yesterday, and I was saying that I mean, when I was a child, it sounds awful, so when I was a child, but we always walked to school. It didn't matter how far away the school was, we walked in all weathers. And but now, most children get taken to school in the car. So that sort of start of your exercise, physical activity at the beginning of the day, is sort of just gone.
Absolutely right. I mean, we're all. I mean, I've got my children have now left school; they've grown. But I'm guilty of driving my kids to school. You know, dropping them at the gate. It'd be much better if we actually walked our children to school if we were close enough, or we indeed just maybe parked a little bit further away. I mean, how many mums do you see scrabbling to be at that gate to drop their kids right there?
Yeah.
When they think they can walk a little distance, you know, especially if there's lots of children walking at the same time. So we really do need to rethink things. And do you know, there's an offshoot to that is how many children get off the school bus and they don't know how to cross the road. The
Mm.
kids that go to the wrong end of the bus, the front end or the back end, depending on with the oncoming traffic, and it's the wrong end. And they're not taught how to cross the road properly when they get off the bus. That's a big thing, but that is an aside. But it's something to think about.
So exercise is the first thing in our set of seven. What's the second thing?
I think what is really big is to feel valued and valid. A lot of people feel as they get older that they are no longer useful. That's a terrible thing. We need a reason to get up in the morning. So, in fact, again, I know a couple have just celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
I know, absolutely brilliant. Can you imagine being married to someone for 70 years? But hey, they
You have to
have.
be the right one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they're very happy. What they do is they have been doing this. They've got two sons, and they've both got their own businesses. So the parents have been doing their bookkeeping for them. And they still do the banking for them, even though the bookkeeping's got a little bit too much because it's all computerized now. But they still get on the bus, go down to the town once a week and do the banking for their sons and that sort of thing. So the family are trying to help them maintain a feeling of contributing to their small community and their small family. So I think it's very important that we feel valued and valid. And it's easy for us to do things for older people. And I think that, and sometimes we have to be careful that we're not doing too much. Because when we take over, because it's all got to be done too quickly, and, you know, oh, give that to me, I'll do that, or I'll open that, or oh, I'll take that upstairs for you. We're actually disempowering them. And that's not fair. You know, I think people should continue to feel useful as far as they possibly can. And that's number two.
And number three.
Number three is you've got to be sociable.
Right.
You know, it's isolation has been heavy in the news lately, and I think isolation kills, and it kills slowly. Talking about my dad used to say loneliness is the worst thing that can happen to anyone, and I think he's right, because when we feel lonely and isolated, we actually get afraid to socialize. We think people are too busy for us to call them, or supposing they're doing something, supposing they're eating, supposing this, supposing that, but supposing they're not. You know, pick up the phone and speak to somebody. If it's not convenient, find out when and talk to them another time, or join groups. It's really, really, really important to be sociable. Now, I know lots of older people think, I'm not going to be social with all those old people. But, you know, it doesn't matter who you're socializing with. What matters is that you're out there doing something where you have contact with people. It's really important to be sociable, really is.
Even if it's just perhaps going to the local shop and talking to the people when you buy a pint of milk, a loaf of bread, you know, if you encourage people to do that.
Absolutely. Again, you walk into the shops and you're talking to people who you see on a regular basis. Now, some will argue that in towns, there is no local bakers, there is no local greengrocers, there's nobody who sees a pattern in your life and chat to you. But in actual fact, supermarkets have their small areas, don't they? You've got the butcher's bit, and you've got the fishmonger bit and the cheese bit and all those. So you can actually build up some kind of rapport with people who are serving you, or people at the cash desk, you know, where you pay. Chat to the people that you recognise is extremely important.
Number four.
Number four, work the brain. You've got to keep learning. You really do have to keep learning. A lot of people do crosswords and Sudoku, and I would never want to pour water on that as not being a good idea, because something is better than nothing. But to really, really exercise the brain, and in order to lay down all those lovely neural pathways and new connections, which we can still do to the day we draw our last breath, we've got to really exercise the brain in a much harder way. So perhaps learning a musical instrument or learning a new language is tough on the brain and makes it work hard, which is great. Those people who are already musical may be learning a new piece of music that's more complicated, just again to get the brain really working hard. So yeah, working the brain is ever so important.
Do you think also, I mean, learning new things that are computer related? Because I know I gave a talk recently at a live event, and I would say mostly the people who are perhaps over 70 rather than people between 50 and 60, they were very proud of the fact they didn't have a computer at home, which I would think A, could be more isolating, but they were afraid to have one. Did you think that's the fear of learning, or is it the fear of technology? Because presumably if people have to learn new things on a PC or an iPad or whatever, that would enable them to connect with others and reconnect those neural pathways or create new ones as well.
Absolutely. And also the thing is, if we do embrace computers a little bit, it's also help us socially with social media, with Facebook, for instance. I mean, my mum's 84 and she's on Facebook on her iPad.
Right.
So she keeps up to speed with what we're all doing. I mean, I think that's great, but one has to, if people, older people do get worried about technology, they do get frightened that they're not going to be able to do it, but they can. They just need somebody to explain it slowly and have patience. And they don't need to know everything a computer can do because none of us do.
No.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I only use exactly what I need to use. And technology moves on so fast that there's no point in that learning anymore because it'll change next week. But
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, it's too horrid to think about. But the point is, if somebody is older and they would like an iPad or a laptop or something, it's a great way of learning, great way of getting those new connections laid down and working well. But it's also a smashing way for them to feel that they're engaged in something different, and their value goes up, their self-worth goes up.
Mhm.
Which is fantastic. They might get frustrated, but that's when we always have to remember that we've got to be patient when we're teaching older people how to do these things.
But then we all get frustrated, don't we, with technology? I don't think that's unique to somebody that much older. I think we can get frustrated with technology at any age, so perhaps we have to stress that.
Uh, Sometimes that's why maybe it's a good idea not always to ask a family member to help us.
Right.
Because if you're a family member a bit too close and we're busy and we get a bit impatient, I mean, I'm not saying that for everybody, but we all know what I mean, I think, in our hearts. So perhaps sometimes it's a good idea to get a friend of the family or indeed pay somebody, if you can afford it, to give you a couple of lessons and remember that it's not just the lessons on how to use things, it's the practice.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea not to think you can break the thing. You can't break it. Just push a load of buttons and see what happens.
Yeah.
You won't break it. And then have another lesson and go over what you thought you did wrong and slowly catch your monkey. But it's a good idea to keep learning.
Next. I think that's number six.
Next is
That's just one memory
nutrition.
now. Yeah.
Okay, nutrition. We all know about fish oils. We all know about plenty of green vegetables. In fact, another little story I've thought of is I know a lady, she's 95. She's as tall as she is round, and she bustles. She bustles everywhere. She's absolutely lovely. And you never see her wear trousers. She's always in a skirt, and she's always in brightly coloured jumpers. But the thing she will always, always, always do is make sure she has a colourful plate.
Right.
That's her thing. She has to have a colourful plate. So on her plate for supper every evening is every vegetable you can think of, as many as she can get on there. And she's in great form. She's out there amongst it doing wonderful things. She's even climbing ladders, which is really naughty, but she does in her kitchen to reach high things. But therefore, nutrition is really, really important that we eat well. And especially when sometimes we might find it hard if we live on our own to actually cook for ourselves. Cooking for one's not much fun. So perhaps rather than have ready-made meals to throw in the microwave, perhaps making up a big stew or a big pot of soup or something and freezing it in portions so that, you get nutrition that way by some good homemade food. There's nothing like it. And on the note of eating well, we've really got to remember about hydration.
Right.
You've got to drink water. When we are dehydrated, it can present itself as dementia. We get befuddled, we get forgetful. And because people are older, they're dismissed as having some mild form of dementia or something, when in actual fact it might be that they're dehydrated, which could actually lead to a kidney infection or urinary infection, which also presents itself as dementia. So it's really, really important to drink plenty of water.
And how much water is enough, or how much should we be aiming for?
Well, there's this lovely 2 litre term that people use, and I'm actually not sure how much scientific basis there is to that 2 litres. Because let's face it, a lot of people drink cups of tea, they might eat fruit, which is watery, they have sauces or gravy with their meals, or they eat soup. There are other ways that we get fluid in our bodies, but sometimes, I mean, again, I'm thinking about my mother this time. What she does is she gets a glass of water and she puts it under the tap in the kitchen, turns on the tap, fills the glass up, takes a drink of water, throws the rest down the sink and thinks she's had a drink of water, a glass of water, but she hasn't. She's had a sip of water. Mm-hmm. So I'm always fighting, saying, no, you've got to have more than that. So what we've done is we've compromised, and we fill up a bottle of water from the tap, and she knows that she's going to have to drink that for the rest of the day, and that's how she measures how much she's drinking, which is a good idea.
Interesting. I went to a talk given by a dermatologist, and he talked about the importance of hydration for the skin. But he said, as you said, you don't just have to drink water; you can actually eat your water as well. So have high water content foods like cucumbers and peppers and things, which can also hydrate your body without you having to actually physically drink a glass of water.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So you do have to think about your diet and what you're eating. I mean, if you're ending up with a slice of toast and then a few biscuits, then it's not very hydrating. But if you are, as I say, eating wet food, then that helps the fluid level as well enormously. It's really important. You want to know the last one? Oh, it's actually there's 2 more. There's another one that's sleep.
Right.
Sleep's a tough one. Do you have trouble sleeping, Karen?
I do wake up in the night. Yeah.
Do you get back to sleep very easily?
No, only if I switch bedrooms. I have to say my reason for waking up in the night is my husband suddenly developed a habit of snoring. Although he says he doesn't snore, he just sometimes may breathe loudly. He denies he snores, but if he happens to have an episode, shall we say, I can't sleep. So.
Yeah, it is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sleep's interesting because our sleep patterns change throughout our lives. Obviously, babies sleep very long, toddlers sleep a little bit less, so on and so forth. And then as we get older, our sleep is disrupted a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's a problem for people. One of the things I do suggest is that if they are tired, to take a nap, but not to nap too late in the day, because that will disrupt sleep in the evening when you go to bed. So it's a good idea if you're going to have a nap to sleep maybe just after lunch or something like that, and not for long, just about 15-minute nap. Some people hate the idea of going to sleep during the day. That's fine, whatever, it's up to the individual. And if that's the case, try not to get stressed about not sleeping, because when we're stressed, we're lying awake and thinking, I've got to go to sleep, I've got to go to sleep, I've got to go to sleep. That's even worse, because we won't go to sleep because we're wound up. It's better actually just to maybe get up and make a cup of tea, or read a book, or do something that's boring and bland. You could put some TV on, I suppose, but carefully it's not too stimulating. Something just to make you drowsy again. But sleep's really, really important. And of course, the other thing is when we get older, is that we need those extra visits to the loo. There might be a bit of a urinary problem, or just, things are just slowing down and the bladder gets a little bit weaker. So we are used to having disrupted sleep as we get older. But as I say, we need to try and compensate for that and think of the times of the day we can sleep.
Or is there an optimal number of hours that we should be aiming for in terms of sleep?
Oh, the latest research is suggesting that 6 to 8 hours is optimum.
Right.
But for some people, that's 4 hours is adequate and absolutely fine. For me, I need less than 6 hours sleep, and I find that I'm actually not functioning very well the following day. The concentration isn't as great. Memory can be slightly impaired if you're overtired. You feel out of sorts, don't you, when you're really tired, haven't slept well. And of course, then you become susceptible to infections and the latest colds or whatever's going around. So sleep is really, really important and not to be underestimated. like all of these things. And of course, then you've got the last one of all, which is stress.
Yeah, that's our extra one. That's our bonus one, isn't it? That's number 8. Yeah.
Yeah, managing stress is the big number 7. I have an uncle. He is actually gets angry at the television. He hears the news and he actually shouts at the television because he's angry at what he's hearing. What's the point of that? They can't hear him. I keep saying they can't hear you, Uncle, but he does. He gets really, really angry about things, and that can exacerbate all sorts of problems. So again, giving another clue into my family. Then my great grandmother used to say, "Hard work never killed anyone, but worry does." And and these days we can call worry stress. So doing any kind of stress relievers, no, that's the wrong word, any kind of stress thing, de-stress things we can do to help ourselves, that's better. That is a really good idea. And have some fun. You can listen to music, you can go for a walk, again that would help the physical exercise enormously. Always get your blood pressure checked, just to make sure that the medical side is taken care of as well. And have some fun, laugh.
Yeah.
Laughter is a great de-stressor, isn't it?
Absolutely. They always say laughter's the best medicine, don't they?
Absolutely right. So, I actually think that laughter is a fantastic thing. So if you're stressed out, go and put on a DVD that is guaranteed to make you laugh, and that will help fantastically.
Wonderful.
7 tips.